today's podcast, we're going to look at the foundations of performance. We're going to look at what it is that performance-driven teams do that others miss. We want to know what gets our teams up for game day every single day. Any team can win some of the time, but only performance-driven teams win consistently. We're going to drill down on the three foundational aspects of a performance-driven team. First, we've got the leader, then we have the team, and then we have the culture of the organisation. Learn how to get your team up for game day every single day. Enjoy the pod. In today's Thrive podcast, we're going to look at a foundational performance plan. Here's a thought. Any team can win some of the time, but only the best win consistently. And we want to know how you as an organisation can win consistently. We don't mind taking the hits as team members, but we often want to know why we're doing it. We want to know why it is that we turn up each day and give our all and what it is to achieve success. What does success look like and how do we do it consistently? This is what every sports person and every person that's achieved any great thing in their field has to ask themselves. I did some study more recently just on Warren Buffett, and there's a thought that people that are really good at things are just really good at things, but they're not. They study, they learn, they improve. Here's a stat. If you invested $1,000 in Berkshire Hathaway when Warren Buffett first kicked it off in the 60s, you would now have $55 million in your bank account. Aren't you glad that Warren Buffett was a long-time learner? Aren't we glad that he sharpened his skills? Well, you probably couldn't care less because you didn't invest $1,000 in his company back in the 60s. But for those who did, wouldn't you be glad? Okay, now, this is the thought. The people that use your service are doing so because they believe that you are the best in your field, that you are the best at what you do. And they're trusting you to be able to pull off what it is that you do. And as an organisation, this is what we call reputation. And the exchange is what we call money. And if you have a poor reputation, the money stops exchanging. And therefore you go out of business. No organisation wants this. So how do we perform as a team? Whether you're a sporting team or whether or not you are, like we all are, in the service business. My business prior to this was construction. And so for nearly 30 years, we're in the construction industry. And it's a very, very hard industry to consistently perform in. And so when I was 5 years into the business that we had bought, I was looking to get out because I wasn't consistent. And that meant that I wasn't consistent with my team, I wasn't consistent with my quality, I wasn't consistent with my service, I wasn't consistent with my cash flow, I wasn't consistent with my profits. And the reason is because I hadn't laid a foundation in my organisation. We were what we call now momentarily stable, not structurally sound. And this is one of the questions that we wanted you to be able to answer by the end of this Thrive session. Are you structurally sound or only momentarily stable? Now, for all the reasons that I've talked about prior to now, we want you to be structurally sound. The way we're going to do it is we're going to show you a foundational performance plan that we believe that you'll be able to utilize in your organization. And there's two aspects to today. There's information and there's integration. We need to meet in the middle on those two things. I'm going to give you the information, and we as an organisation, 1,000 Feet Deep, can help you with integration. But if we never hear from you again, we're fine with that, as long as you integrate the information that we give you today. We don't want it just to remain information. We want you to be able to integrate what it is we've talked about. I firmly believe that this is a foundational performance plan, and that if you follow this game plan, I believe that you'll be able to have a consistent organisation that performs at a high level. Okay, let's have a look. We're calling this, as I said, our foundational performance plan. Okay. Now, it consists of partnerships, if you will. What are those partnerships? We have team, of course. We have the organisation itself. and we have leadership or leaders. Now, I want to say from the very outset that I would say that we are all leaders. This is me talking to a team of people. There are organisational leaders, so there's a business owner, depending on who we're speaking with. There's business owners, and there's managers, and there's the team. Okay, so this is the thought. We are all in some way leaders. Let me tell you why. Because part of a foundational performance plan is that everybody in the organisation has this. Influence. Everybody needs to be influencing outcomes. We say that leadership is your ability to be able to influence outcomes. So it's your ability to be able to influence the desired results of the organisation. And that's important for everybody to be able to influence the desired results of the organisation. Influence and moving forward in the organisation depends on everybody doing their part. And so that means that we're all leaders. But I also understand that there are specific people that are leading the organisation that you now run. We're going to talk to that. We're going to talk to the team. We're going to talk about what's foundational for them, and we're going to talk about what's foundational for the organisation. So let's start with the organisation. What is foundational for an organisation? Let's have a look. We would say it's this: capacity-driven leadership. Okay, this is somebody committed to building the capacity of the organisation. Somebody putting time and resources into the organisation to make sure that we build capacity into a couple of key central things. Now, what are those things? The next point: system and process. Okay. When we think system and process, what we're trying to do is streamline your organisation so that people aren't relying on memory and people aren't storing information for themselves. The thing is, with teams and organisations, people move on. People move to Queensland, they move to Victoria, they leave for good and bad reasons. And if somebody's gatekeeping information and you as a team haven't got access to the way the organisation runs, system and process, you are going to hit a wall. If you are momentarily stable, the problem is this, is that when you have success, the weight of success bears down on your organisation. And what happens is, if you have not got a foundation in your organisation, the cracks will begin to show. One of the foundational ways that we prevent organisations from cracking is we ensure that they've got really strong system and processes. It's great to have really good people, but really good people leave. Really good people get sick. Really good people go on holidays. We want to make sure that foundationally your organisation is held up by system and process. What's the next point? We want to make sure that your organisation is held up by strong role and responsibility. Okay. System and process, role and responsibility. Role and responsibility is really, really clear job descriptions, really, really clear KPIs, really, really clear goals. We want to make sure that your organisation, like a football team, understands exactly what they need from their fullback and exactly what they need from their front rower. Now, I use football analogies a lot, and excuse me for you guys who don't follow rugby league, but this is the thought. When I first started off in business, I was putting front rowers in fullback and fullback in the front row. I was just looking for anybody to help me anywhere. We want to build an organisation that can carry the way to success, because the people that are running, people that are responsible for their positions are actually fit for it. So we would say this, that foundational to an organisation is capacity-driven leadership. Somebody that is a coach in the stands, if you will, not a player in the field. Somebody that has time and emotional energy to build capacity into the organisation, build capacity into system and process, role and responsibility, making the roles and responsibility, the positions on your team very clear. And lastly, cultural health. Okay. The cultural health of an organisation is super important. If you go to a cafe and you get a really, really good coffee 1 time out of 5, is that a good culture? What about if you go and you get amazing coffee all the time, but they're really snappy and snarly? Is that a good culture? This is the thought. You can't separate performance and behaviour from cultural health. They are one. And so we need to make sure that when we think about what it is to be foundational and have performance, that we have an organisation that has strong cultural health. And we deem strong cultural health to be performance and behaviour. Okay. Nobody likes to be thrown under the bus. Nobody likes to be gossiped about. Nobody likes to be stolen from. Nobody likes to have continual issues and fires that have to put out because somebody else is not doing their job. Cultural health is super important for the stability and the structural integrity of an organisation. Okay, now that we've talked about that for organisation, let's have a look what the responsibilities are of leadership. Leadership need to do this. Set the expectations. The expectations of the organisation need to be super, super clear. I love a quote from Lauren Deanmoss. She says this, that high standards only scare those who have none. Setting the expectations is very, very clear mission, vision and core values. Setting the expectation is having very, very strong system and process. Very, very clear role and responsibilities. Making sure that the cultural health standards of the organisation are very clear. A leader's fundamental role is to firstly set the expectation. Then what we need to be doing is we need to be empowering the outcome. Okay. Even the best of sports people and the best of professionals, whether they be artists, musicians, actors, it doesn't matter, need coaches. They need people to help them to be able to achieve at a high standard. So we can't just be setting the expectation and then not empowering the outcome. We need to know our strengths, we need to know our improvement areas, and we need to be empowering each other to ensure that we're moving forward and we're improving. We all know what it is to work with that team member that just doesn't improve, that makes the same old mistake, that has the same old attitude problem. Hey, don't look around or point any fingers. We're all guilty of it. But the thing is this, it's one thing to set the expectation, but we need to be an organisation that also empowers the outcome. And ultimately that comes back down to leadership. What's the third point? The third point of a foundation, if you will, foundation of leadership is this. We need to measure the result. Okay, what do we mean by that? Nobody wants to find out the hard way that things aren't getting done. Nobody wants to find out through a customer complaint that things aren't right. Nobody wants to find out when it's too late that system and process isn't being followed, or that you as a team member need to carry someone's load because they've made a mistake or dropped the ball or haven't done something, and now you've got a fire in your lap and you've got to put it out. So the way we do that is we, as best we can, measure the result. Essentially, whenever it is we set a system and process, we want to ask this question: how are we measuring how our performance is going? When we're setting role and responsibility, how are we measuring performance and behaviour? How is it that we know if we're winning, succeeding? So one way with role and responsibility is KPIs, goals. When we think about measuring the result, the way we think about it is we have a touch point report. I want to be able to know an organisation at a touch point how things are going. So for a sales team, for instance, we want to be able to measure not just the sales, but also the driver of sales. So how many leads we've got, how many people we're speaking to, how many quotes we're doing. We need to know what our conversion rate is. And so we're always looking to measure the results. We don't want to find out the hard way that we haven't got sales. We want to measure the drivers of sales so that we can somewhat see in advance how our end result is going to be. So what's the last foundational point of leadership? We would say that it's hold accountable. So what's accountability? Accountability is simply a commitment to a standard. It's making sure that the standards and the expectations are very clear, then making sure that you as a team are holding each other accountable to those standards. Here's the big mistake we make. Accountability these days can be somewhat of a swear word. It's not meant to be done in wartime. It's meant to be done by following the 3 steps prior. The big mistake that we make is we try to hold people accountable before we've set the expectation, before we've empowered the outcome, before we've measured the results. So in other words, before we've measured the little metrics that lead towards success. If we don't do those 3 things well, all we're left with is holding people accountable. Now, the other thought is this, is that accountability is 100% going to happen, because we know when the ball's been dropped and we haven't, when we've missed the mark and when things have gone wrong. So we're definitely going to have to hold people accountable, but we don't definitely have to set the expectation. We don't definitely have to empower the outcome, and we don't definitely have to measure the result. When we do the first 3 well, we won't have to do the last one as much. And when we talk about accountability, this is another attribute we want. We want to be able to do this respectfully. Respect. Okay, what are we doing here, guys? What we're filling up this triangle with is what it looks like to perform. What other things, before we move on to team, do we want our organisation to look like? For any business owner out there, you absolutely want to make sure that you are making money. You want to make sure that you're not going backwards. I'm sure as a team, you want to make sure that you're part of a team that has a good reputation. I'm sure that when you hold each other accountable, you want to make sure it's respectful. When you're measuring the results, you want to make sure that there's some consistency. We want health. We want to achieve. There's so many things that we want to be able to do as a team that are a byproduct of the other things that we're talking about. You can't have consistency unless you have the foundations of an organisation. You can't have consistency unless the leader is doing what's foundational for leadership. And you can't have consistency, success, influence, health, reputation, and finance if the team isn't doing what's foundational for them. Now let's have a look at that. With the team, we want to make sure that teams are turning up every day, every week, and every month, and every year in regards to skill set, mindset, and character. Or what we call hand, head, and heart. It's super important. In our old industry, we're in the construction industry, like I've mentioned a couple of times, we used to really work well on that. There wasn't too many tradespeople out there who didn't know how to do their job. Obviously, there was varying quality levels, which gets back to some of the things we've spoken about today, consistency. One other really big byproduct is quality. We'll keep on going in the middle here because we want to build what it is to be a high-performance, foundationally high-performing team. But skill set is one of the things that we always look after. It's kind of like accountability. You're always going to have to hold people accountable because things are always going to go south, even if you're an amazing team. Well, you're always going to need to work on skill set because people just need to know what it is they're doing. But what often gets missed is mindset. And what about character? So when we think about mindset, mindset is your ability to be able to do your job consistently without stressing out all the time. So it's your ability to be able to be quite resilient, to be able to handle rejection, to be able to handle problems, to be able to manage time. Mindset is your ability to be able to outwork your role under pressure, if you will. It's your ability to be able problem solve. Essentially, problem solving is vision casting. It's being able to look at something that's negative and to be able to see where it can be positive. That takes a positive mindset. When we're talking about character, what we're talking about here is your ability to be able to work as a team. Are you a team focused or are you self-focused? Do you throw each other under the bus? Do you make excuses? Are you accountable to a standard? Here's one for the middle. Are you unified as a team? Character is your ability to be able to go through an issue and be able to stay unified. Now, unity doesn't mean you always agree. It means that you're committed to each other. It means that you are committed to the team even if you disagree about certain things. Now, that's a character trait. What else is a character trait? Not to bitch about each other, not to gossip about each other, not to talk about each other behind our back. It's to not steal and do things that are horrible and undermine the integrity of the organisation. Now, we're not perfect, but if you don't have character, it's very hard to be able to perform as a team. And so team members need to be able to turn up. Skill set, mindset, and character are what we call hand, head, and heart. So, whose responsibility is that? Leadership. Leadership needs to make sure that they are setting the expectation, empowering the outcome, measuring the results, and holding people accountable regarding skill set, mindset, and character. Then what we need to do as teams is we need to make sure that we are upholding the foundational principles of the organisation, which is capacity-driven leadership, building capacity into system and process, role and responsibility, and cultural health. Teams are responsible for these foundational principles of the organisation, as are leaders. And so you can see when we think about what it is to be a high-performing team, health, unity, influence, consistency, quality, success, achievement, finance, reputation, respect. These things are high performers. But they are byproducts. They are byproducts of what is foundational. And what is foundational for leaders is set the expectation, empower the outcome, measure the results, and hold people accountable. What is foundational for teams is skill set, mindset, and character, or what we call hand, head, and heart. What is foundational for both leaders and team members is capacity-driven leadership, system and process, role and responsibility, and cultural health. This is what we would call a foundational performance plan. You as an organisation do these things and you will turn up more consistently in the areas that you deem as high performance metrics. We want to make sure not only you're performing, that you're performing at a level with less stress, that you're able to answer this fundamental question. Are we structurally sound or only momentarily stable? Are we able to achieve the desired results of our organisation without stress and strain and the grind? When I talked a little bit about my organisation in the first 5 years, it wasn't that we didn't have a little bit of success or any reputation. It wasn't that we didn't have any quality. We actually strived really hard to build quality homes for all of our clients. It wasn't that we didn't achieve these things. It was that it was so very hard and an absolute grind to do so. It was harder than it needed to be. And this is what I said at the beginning, that any team can win some of the time, but only high-performing teams can win all of the time or consistently. And if you want to win consistently as a team, you need a game plan. This is your game plan. Leadership, team, organisations, your foundational performance plan. Everybody doing what they're meant to do. Now, there's lots of different areas that we can break off from here. We go into a lot more detail about what hand, head, and heart look like. We also go into a great detail on what set the expectation, empower the outcome, measuring the result, and holding the people accountable looks like. So this foundational performance plan is what we would say is a basic insight into what can be a lot more technical in regards to the foundations of leadership, the foundations of team, the foundations of an organisation. We branch off in a lot more detail in our program, what we call the Hand at Heart program, but this is what we call fundamental. You do these things and you're going to turn up, you're going to start to perform more consistently under less stress, and you're going to be able to answer this fundamental question: are you structurally sound or only momentarily stable?